Welcome to Discuss With Us podcast, where we are unpacking the world through a Christian lens. I am your host, Darcy Durkowski, along with my husband, Brian, and our intention is to pose topics, trending and otherwise, and unpack them with the help of some research, insights from our different backgrounds, and even some listener input in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, and discuss with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. I am Brian, along with my wife Darcy, across the way on the ones and twos. How you doing this week?
It's been a long week, to
It-
say the least.
It has been one of the longest weeks in some time, and that's saying something because we have 3 kids, so they're all long.
Yeah, they are. But this week was extra. We had something every evening, and you and I are homebodies. We're not really
Yeah,
used to all that.
I think Tuesday through even today, which is Sunday, we've had something every night, I think.
Yeah. Birthday parties,
Yep,
t-ball practice,
yep.
opening ceremonies.
Oh, yeah, that was hot.
You've had 2 gigs.
Yes, and that's another thing that's going to be working hard on me right now. I've the past 2 days probably gotten a total of 8.5 hours of sleep. So we're gonna see how this goes, but I'm gonna fight through it and and we're gonna make something of this. So I hope everyone had as much fun this week doing the personality test as we did when we did
Yeah.
it. If you haven't taken it yet, I really do think go back after this and take the test. We're gonna unpack some stuff here and talk about what's good about it, what's bad about it, and how we use it. And so but don't just take my word for it. Go take it.
Yeah.
If you have a spouse, friends, family, kind of go over your results with them and have some fun with this because this was one of the more fun things to do.
Yeah. No, this was Brian and I are talkers, and this was
We found
something
that out.
we did. But we've always been talkers, but this was something that we spent almost an entire day.
Longer
Yeah, maybe so.
because
Pretty
we
much
took
a
this a
whole
while
weekend.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we get into it, kind of want to give it a little bit of structure because otherwise
Hmm.
we're going to go off on some really hard tangents here,
For sure.
especially with my lack of sleep.
Yeah.
So, couple key things to note. This is how we set it up was looking at your results on this test. How can you use this for your current or maybe even a future job? So
Hmm.
you've got the work aspect. How can you use this for self reflection? Because there was a lot that I don't know. We read them all together, but we haven't show
Yeah.
prepped as well as I guess we should have for this. But how you can use it internally, looking
Hmm.
back, and I do think that kind of leads you on a spiritual path there.
Hmm.
And then how you can use this in a relationship, whether it be a marriage, family member,
Or
friends,
just
things
in
like that.
general relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How you interact with everyone. That'll kind of tie in with some of the work stuff and self reflection as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, okay, so first of all, let's tell everybody what we are.
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. We got Cinco in studio. Of course, I think he's taking a nap right now. I was going to have
Yeah.
him do a drum roll on the drum set, but I guess we'll just have to do it ourselves. But so, drum roll, please. What did
Hmm.
you come up as?
I am an ENFJ, which is called the teacher.
Yes, for those of you, I think we said it on the last episode, we took ours on what was it, like Truity or something like that?
Yeah, which actually they have like pretty much all of the personality tests you can take there. But for us and for this purpose, we did the Myers-Briggs.
Yes, that hence the 4 letters.
Right. Yeah. So there's 4 letters. Okay. So let's tell what you were, and then we'll kind of break down what the letters are.
Yeah. So I was, drum roll please, INTP.
Mm-hmm.
About 50% of you out there are like, of course, and 50% of you out there are like, really? But yeah, so
Introverted, Brian.
I am the architect for
Mm,
whatever that's worth.
yes. So let's get into, first of all, before we dive off in anything else, let's at least explain what the letters are. So we've got extrovert versus introvert.
E and I.
And so I liked the way that it detailed. I pulled my results back up so I could
Oh, you're
revert back to
cheating.
this.
I don't even have mine anymore.
I wanted to print them out, but it wouldn't let me because it's like these are private.
Yeah,
You
well,
can't do it.
you got to pay for more of it.
I guess so to get like a download. But anyway, so this first letter, extrovert versus introvert, if you're not really super familiar with that terminology, or even if you are, it's
It's Darcy and me.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's your energy style, is what they call it. So
Yeah,
how you manage your energy.
yeah, and for most of us out there, you know, if you're really outgoing, talking to strangers, stuff
Like big crowds,
yeah,
like want
then
to be the center of attention a little bit.
you are
Not everybody,
typically
but
going to be more of an extrovert.
yeah.
And if you are more of, I talk with small groups of friends,
hmm
don't really like public speaking, things like that, you're going to lean more on the introverted side.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ground in between
Of
for,
course, we
yeah,
will get there.
yeah, exactly. But that's the first one. And then the second one is so intuitive
hmm
versus sensing.
Yeah, they didn't actually go alphabetically there, but okay.
Well, intuitive, whatever. Give them a little leeway there. But this refers to your cognitive style.
Yeah, this is the one, and we kind of talked about this a little earlier before we started. Out of all of the four, because we talked about just with ourselves, there's a sliding scale to these. If any of
hmm
you looked at your super in depth results, and I do feel like this is the one letter that's kind of you're really kind of set in your ways on this. You're either going to be more of the
It's a
sensing,
nature thing more
yeah,
so than a nurture thing.
yeah, that's not that you can't improve any of these, but this was the one where I was like, I feel like this is just who I am. Like, there's not a lot of
hmm
middle ground for me here.
Yeah. So it describes how you process information. So intuitive versus sensing.
Yeah, and sensing, what is that one? Do you?
I don't have that S pulled
Neither one
up.
of us
But
were S's, so we don't have it. Well, move on to the next one. Someone who's an
well,
S will
no,
just
I
tell
think
them.
it's more fact driven, whereas sensing is more idea. I think that's part of the.
We'll go with it. Makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Okay. Sorry if I screwed that up for all of you S's out there. Um, but okay, so then the next one is feeling versus thinking, which is kind of self-explanatory,
Yeah,
but
a little bit.
and also probably to your point about like nature versus nurture. This is probably still one of those nature, closer to the nature side of
Yeah,
it, but
yeah, I agree.
it describes your orientation to personal values.
Ooh. This is, we will talk about this one later because we are opposite. You were an
hmm
F, I was a T.
hmm
And you're right. The two middle letters are probably the more set in your ways. The
Yeah.
1 and 4 are, I feel like, the easier ones to kind of adjust throughout your
hmm
life. But I felt like this one definitely had an easier route to work on it either way, depending on where you fall on the scale.
Oh, like you can manipulate it a little or work on it a little bit more,
Yeah, and
I
that's kind of
guess.
the stuff we'll get in later. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was the second letter was the one I really struggled with because I think you and I both also scored really high on like intuitive, and I was like, oh, that's just what you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you say really high, just like we're our percentage is
Really
way
high
over
that
in the
direction.
yeah. Okay, and so then the last one is judging versus perceiving.
Were you judgmental?
I know that's what it sounds like.
That's what
Whenever I
it
read
feels
that, I
like,
was
right?
like, "Ooh, I don't know if I like that." That's kind of got a negative connotation, but then you read about it and it's like, okay, that makes more sense. But this dimension describes how you organize your life.
Yes, and this was whether it's right or wrong, it's the easiest way to describe it. I feel like the number one aspect of
hmm
whether you got just in the few people we've polled so far,
Right.
if you got a J or if you got a P. If you got a J, you are typically on time wherever you go or you want
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
which is
You
you.
care about it.
Yeah. Or you're a P like me, which is like, well, we'll show up whenever. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that big a deal. The party started at 7, but you don't have to get there till 8.
Makes my skin crawl.
I
But
know, yeah.
yeah. Okay. So, anyways, those are the four letters, or the four. I don't know. I guess there's 8 letters, but anyways, 16 possibilities on the different personality
And
types.
that's it. There's only 16 types of us in the world.
Yeah, I'm sure there's not more to us than that.
Yeah, and we'll find that out here in a little bit. But
Yeah.
let's jump in right here because
Hmm.
you and I have, and you really have an interesting role for this first part that we're talking about work wise, because you actually, in your current job and even past jobs, a big aspect of you being in sales management has been hiring employees,
Hmm.
and then obviously managing them as you go. So I've had to I had to take one to start my job, and I will talk about this more, but I wish I remembered what it was, like where I
Right.
fell on the scale. And I probably could go back and get the results. I just haven't done that. Um, but we had to do that before we got hired. And they took those results and kind of saw how it fit into the roles for the positions you were interviewing for, and management style. And so I don't think you do that at your current job. So I was just
Yeah.
curious what you thought about that.
No, it's really interesting because this has not been hard part of my hiring process to do any kind of, personality test.
Yeah, you've never done that in past jobs or anything, right?
No, no, I haven't. I've just gone off of interviews, and well, I mean, if you look in my personality, I try to be a pretty good read of the room. That's
Yeah,
kind of like part of
you
part
kind
of
of
my
have your
gig.
own little test, I think, for it.
Yeah, but especially after having done one that was geared toward the workplace, which is where all of this started, was I had to take one for work. And after doing that, I reached out to my HR director and I was like, "Can I get my hands on one of these to be able to do for my employees?" But I guess even with talking with him and just the discussion that we've had, I think the way that I will be implementing this is not right off the bat because, and this is something that you and I talk about with you having taken your personality test before being hired on.
Yeah, like 9 years ago.
Yeah. Um, and you say, you're like, I don't know if I answered it the way, true to self
Oh,
because I
yeah.
was trying to get a job.
It was, and you're in a different, like for me, it was the combination of yes, I wanted the job.
Hmm.
So I can't remember how I answered everything. So yeah,
Right.
there's that side of it. And then, as we'll talk about later, you
Yeah,
don't want
this
to
isn't the whole.
pigeonhole
Yeah,
somebody in
exactly.
anything.
Yeah. And so I think the way that I would like to use it is maybe before somebody's like 6 month or yearly review.
Oh, yeah,
After
that's a good
you
point.
already kind of have your own conclusions and impressions and things made from personal experience with them. And then also just for the purpose of having them in a little bit more like laid back atmosphere, taking it and hopefully being more true to themselves
Yeah,
rather than trying to, get a job, like you said.
or give the answer they think you want them to give.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, but just thinking about like my hiring process, one of the things that I say in every single interview that I end up doing is um, I kind of tell them what or at first I try to kind of get out of them the way they're going to need to be managed. And
Uh
I
huh.
and I always ask them what they think that they're going to struggle with most, which I feel like I always disclaimer I'm like this isn't a trick question. I really do want to know what about this position you think that you'll struggle with
Yeah. So
most.
then you can help them.
Exactly. Because well, and then I know what I'm going to have to manage the most. And I know for myself I'm not a micromanager and I always end up telling them that. So I'm like I can't have somebody that needs to be micromanaged, you know what I
Aha.
mean? So I try to make sure that we're compatible that way, I guess is the way that you would
This lines
look
up
at that.
so much because I think yours ENFJ, you're like the teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As you can tell right now how she's describing it. So you are ENFJ. That's kind of how you use it, management style.
Hmm.
what did you find with your personality type, specifically with you at your job? I kind of just gave you a little jump start there, saying you're the teacher and you kind of do some teacher stuff as a manager.
Yeah, it's funny because my mom always told me that she was like, "You're good at teaching things." And if I look back on my jobs that I had, they were all different, but I was like teaching gymnastics or teaching horse riding
Yeah,
lessons
that's true.
or and then even here I did sales for a bit, which goes toward more of my like extroverted qualities and things like that, and
A little
just
bit.
organization skills and stuff. But now a lot of my job has to do with teaching.
Yeah,
Teaching people sales, teaching them our services, things like that. But as far as looking at this through the lens of the workplace, though, with both the results that I got from the initial one that I took that was geared more towards the workplace
hmm
and this Myers Briggs one, a couple of things stood out to me. So, one, I don't think I ever gave myself enough credit for, like, apparently I do think outside of the box a lot. And
uh-huh.
I guess I am kind of figuring that out with work, but I never considered myself a super creative person.
Well, your job is very abstract, so I feel like you're
Yeah.
constantly having to be outside of the box.
Yeah. But I feel like that's only really happened within the last couple of years that
hmm
I've kind of embraced more of that.
Yeah,
And I give you some of the credit for that too, because you kind of helped
naturally.
me. Okay. But you kind of helped me be more confident in some of that stuff. But I never really considered myself super creative or super, not the one with all the ideas. I thought I was more data driven, and I am data driven. I love data, but I guess I looking at my results, and it basically says this is like I use the data to come up with ideas, and I'm always looking at how something can be done better.
Yeah,
And so that was kind of enlightening to me because I don't think I would have said that about myself. So that kind of gives me a little confidence,
right.
a little boost, and is really helpful in the current job that I'm in.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and then as far as the weaknesses, I mean, I think I was pretty in tune with those. But a lot of what it was saying is basically that I can be impatient, and I can definitely be impatient.
Understatement of the century, I
Yeah.
think.
And it was saying that, like, um, I don't get bogged down with like whether my idea aligns with others or is traditional. I just think I'm right and go.
That is also pretty much true through and through for you, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I think I was pretty aware of that, but it did have some good insights and something about reading it about yourself. It makes you think about like the first thing I want to do is get better at that, not be as impatient,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
also maybe have more tact when I'm trying to move forward with an idea that I think is right, or so it was very helpful as far as the workplace. Um I do think that it's helpful and has a lot of insights.
No, and it's really funny. I really enjoy doing this a lot more than I thought I would.
Mhm.
I mean, even when we were talking about doing this podcast, I had no thoughts of doing anything like this. And when we took it, we like instantly had to send it to our family and
Yeah.
some friends because I was like, this is good. This isn't
Yeah.
I had it in my head this was gonna be like one of those things like what were
Yeah.
they in like
It's
the
not
what
accurate or
was it like
something.
Cosmo magazine where they always had those like
Oh.
quizzes and stuff, or
Yeah.
more like star sign and
I
stuff
haven't
like that.
the zodiac.
Yeah, stuff like that. That's
Ugh.
kind of what I thought about it. But honestly, doing this, I got a lot of useful information out of it
Yeah.
too. And especially because I already thought I knew a lot of this stuff
Mhm.
about myself. And some of it reinforced. And similar to you, other things I kind of read was like, huh. And I'm using that as a positive now.
Mhm.
And it takes me back. So I cannot remember, but I swear it was one of these Myers Briggs type tests that I took. And like I said, it's been
Mhm.
almost 9 years since I took it. And I don't have the results to it. I'm guessing it would be about the same as it is now. And that's where it is funny to me. Like, some people are going to be like, well, you're doing this podcast, you play music almost
Mhm.
every weekend. Like, what do you mean you're not extroverted? And it's like, well, but some of that is I have had a sense of who I am. My natural inclination is to be more of the hermit type. Um, some people will listen to this and say, I've never heard you talk that much in your life. So, and that's true, but I have known the introvertedness of me for a long
Mhm.
time. So I've always fought against that and kind of worked to make that more of a strength.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really the one thing I'll say about this is so some people will think I come off as extroverted, so you naturally say it's like, oh, you're forcing yourself to be extroverted, and I really hate putting it that way because I view it as something that I've strengthened. Um,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
other big one for me is thinking versus feeling.
Mhm.
I have countless examples where I take logic over feeling, but I'm
Mm.
not heartless. I don't want to put it
Right.
that way either. It's just naturally where my head goes. You and I have talked
Mhm.
about this when, we'll be talking about anyone's situation, and my head will naturally go, and some people would say this is just more the male way to do that. I'll just logically go to what the next thing is. I
Yeah.
go back and
Whereas I'm like, oh, how does so and so feel about it?
yeah, and you'll get
Yeah.
frustrated with it. We'll talk about that with conflict resolution maybe later, but it's just where my head goes at first.
Mhm.
I do get the empathy and the sympathy. On my sliding scale, I'm pretty close on the thinking versus feeling. I
Mhm.
wasn't drastically over in one way,
Yeah.
but
But the big thing isn't even to try to be one way or another. It's more about being aware of where you are in different scenarios, I think.
yeah, exactly. And I do that well at work. It is
Yeah.
funny because we're
No,
kind of
you
talking
do.
about the work part right now, and it's almost like you live two separate lives.
Yeah,
Because
you have a different phone voice when you're
a little bit, huh?
yeah,
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
when you're working.
people have said that you're not the first one to say that. So yeah, let me summarize this. At my
Mhm.
current job, small talk conversation, people's feelings, and timelines are not exactly my strong suits. Because of this, I've got my workarounds to kind of, you're like a different person at work, right? So, I'm meeting new customers or even in work meetings or stuff. I'll have my go-to starter lines. When it comes to the feeling aspect, I make sure I double check
Mhm.
myself from going straight logical. And ironically, so essentially, my job is problem solving when construction goes awry
Mhm.
in residential. So I have gotten so good at that, I feel like I will end up having to make sure other people are accounting for feelings of workers or
Yeah.
customers and stuff like that more so than other people are really aware of. And it's
Mhm.
it's one of those things where it's not where my head goes first, so I spend more time thinking about that.
Yeah.
Then anyone who knows me will know timeliness is not exactly something that is high up on my list of strengths. It's probably way more towards the bottom.
Mm.
I will say I think I've gotten a lot better. All credit due to you.
Mm. It was a rough road to get here.
We're not all the way there yet,
No, we're not. We're
but
still late everywhere, but we're a little better.
and I'm not late at work. That's one of the funny things about it.
Valuable.
Especially I can't be.
Mhm.
So the territory I cover is I mean, I can drive 300 miles in a day.
Mhm.
So not often, but I still do. Um, because so now I have this. I'm like 2 weeks out, scheduled on a planner, hour
Mhm.
to hour, not quite minute to minute, but I that's one that I'm constantly working on. So work wise, and it could be funny. We could have a
Mhm.
whole another conversation on what your four letters are at work versus your four letters at home. I think those sometimes might be two different things, at least
Yeah.
for me, probably.
Yeah, I think I can actually maybe bridge some of what you're saying too. So, with a scientific fact,
Ooh,
maybe.
that'll get me going.
Yeah. So, this was something that I learned about following a kind of a tragic accident here recently that somebody had and their head injury, and they were talking about neural pathways.
Oh,
Yeah, and so apparently your brain has these neural pathways, and I immediately picture the actual brain and all those like squiggly,
yeah, whatever those are.
yeah, whatever that is, neural pathways, I guess. And so you have these neural pathways, and if they get damaged or if something happens to them, you essentially can you create new neural pathways. And so kind of what you're saying is like you've got like a default neural pathway, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what we're talking about here with your personality test. And so, but it's not, our brain isn't dead. It's a living
Ah, yeah.
organ, and it's something that we can work on, and we can kind of bridge, these areas that we think we might need improvement in as long as we're self-aware. And so for you, you know who you are, and you know what your job requires, and how what you need to do a job well done. And sometimes there's a little bit of bridging that needs to be done. um, and so that's where we just, if you're not self-aware, you can't bridge that.
Oh, exactly. And I think that's where this test really kind of opened it up.
Mm-hmm.
I do think just going back, I'm not sure that our personality changes a lot,
Right.
but I do think where we fall on these sliding scales changes.
Sure.
And I'm just having this realization that I do think we're probably different at work than we are at home. And you would have two different ones. When
Yeah.
I got to the self-reflection aspect of this, and I don't know how many of y'all went in depth kind of reading all the stuff you can see comparables of
Mm-hmm.
famous people who identified how they even know that. I'm pretty sure they just made up. I don't think all
Yeah,
these people took these tests, but it
that's
is
true.
funny. But the one of the things that I saw when I was reading through mine, you're seeing all this fun stuff. The INTP personality is the least likely. I don't know if this is true. Just what this says. It says the least likely to believe in God.
Mm,
And that was like,
ouch.
yeah, I'm reading all these things and I see that and I was like, oh man. Well, and then it like freaked me out a little bit, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh God,
Yeah.
where what does that mean for me? And this
Mm-hmm.
is something we'll talk about a little later about how, you can't
Yeah,
take.
reading your weaknesses can kind of suck the fun out of
Well,
anything.
that wasn't even on the weakness side. It was just like a little blurb out there, like, hey, just so you know, fun fact about INTPs. And I was like, oh man, we're terrible people, maybe.
Yeah,
But
no, but the important thing here, this is where we kind of have to be careful of these tools, because of using these tools, because they are just meant to be a tool. They're not like, just black and white on what we are and what we're not. And
uh
that
huh,
we can definitely fall into that, I think. And it's not just with personality test either, but using this example, like we say, you know, I am an ENFJ, but really it's more like I have ENFJ tendencies.
and qualities.
Yeah. So using these tools, you can get so excited reading these things. You're like, oh, yeah, that is me. That is
You're
me.
right.
Oh, this is totally
It's
me.
like
Oh,
that
I need to work on.
horoscope stuff.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so we can be very quick to pigeonhole ourselves. And so, that's obviously not the conversation that we're having here. We're talking about the use of it, using it as a tool to be
Exactly.
self aware. But that is one of the things that we need to use some caution when we're going through this, and make sure that we're not pigeonholing ourselves, because the reality of it is, yes, these tests may be pretty accurate and pretty on point in showing us our tendencies, but it's a tool for self improvement. And we need to remember
Hmm.
that we are ultimately children of God, and you can't pigeonhole God. And it's like, my boss, when he was going over my results with me, he was like, and I was also talking with him about maybe using a personality test for my hiring process too.
Yeah.
And he was like, yes, that's good. Obviously, that's why we used it here. But you have to remember that these are pieces of the puzzle, and they're never going to be all the pieces.
Exactly.
Um, but going back to, being made in the image of God, it when I was preparing for this, it was reminding me of one of the verses that um, it's a verse in Corinthians, First Corinthians, I think 10:13, and it gets misused all the time, and it drives me up the wall. Okay, so let me pull it up because I don't want to misspeak here,
Yeah. Don't
but
do that.
don't want to paraphrase God, but it says, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it." And you're like, what does that have to do with this? But the way I see it is, being made in the image of God, and the purpose of God making us is for us to be engaged in a relationship with Him and
Mm-hmm.
rely on Him. And when people use this verse, they always say, this is sounding really judgy of me right now, but they always say, God won't give me what I can't bear.
Oh, yeah.
And He absolutely all day long will give us what we can't bear because we're supposed to rely on Him. He'll
Oh, yeah.
give
Mm-hmm.
us what we can't bear on our own in order for us to turn to Him.
Right. Exactly.
And so I think that verse gets misused, and I think people these days can get very caught up um, in what their path is supposed to be and forget that it's supposed to include God and His will for us.
No, and that I think that's one of the things my personality type does
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
that's where that big question comes in is, and I have this
It's a
problem.
control thing. It's a,
Yes.
we're
And just
thinking
us
that
as
we're
humans,
right.
right?
Yeah. We're thinking we've got it and all these things.
Yeah, that
Um,
story's told throughout the Bible
it,
over and over again.
yeah, you always say that's the recurring theme of the Bible
Over and
is
over.
God saving us and then us thinking we've got it, and then God saving us and then us thinking we've got it and screwing it up. So yeah, that's just one of the things that I think we have to be cautious of, not just in this personality test. I mean, a lot of them I think can be very innocent and very useful. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? But
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah, but we do have to be cautious of how we use it, and ultimately, not use it as kind of the end all be all. We don't want to pigeonhole God. We can't pigeonhole God.
No.
And we want to just kind of be self aware and allow Him to help us strengthen our weaknesses. Um, and an interesting note here that I had
Oh, we
actually.
didn't do a fun fact. So,
Oh, do you have a fun fact?
no, I think, aren't you saying one right now?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
You just
I
said
guess this.
interesting fact.
Okay, interesting fact. I guess I'll do it. Here's our fun fact of the week. Um, so the Catholic Church doesn't come out and say which personality tests are right or wrong.
Good guy. I had no idea.
um, in fact, I don't think they give any dignity to just even talking about the merit of personality tests or not, maybe. But actually, I do think they endorse is a strong word, but they suggest using Myers Briggs, or they use the four temperaments a lot.
Oh, that's the one you talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, which that one I haven't done, and maybe we'll do that one next. It's where they break it down into four temperaments. I don't even know if I'm saying these words right. Sanguine, I can't be saying that right. Sanguine, melancholic, choleric, and phlegmatic. Air, earth, fire, and water is how
Ooh.
those are. Yeah, I know. That's really interesting. I'd like to do that one too. Um,
Figure out which team member of Captain Planet we're going to be.
yeah. So those are all good. The only one really that I can see anyways that they caution against is the Enneagram.
Okay. Never heard of that word before right now. What is that?
Well, I haven't even ever taken it, so I don't know if I can even really speak on it, but it's a 9 type personality
Oh,
test.
well, 16 is better than 9.
But supposedly its roots are less personality type driven and more spiritual,
Oh, yeah.
which,
So,
can get hairy quick
yeah.
from a faith in God standpoint. So, but they do use the Myers Briggs. Oh, and also the five love languages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've
Hmm.
talked about that one.
Yeah, because we did that one at our Engaged Encounters
Yes.
retreat. We talked about the five love languages. But anyways, what I was saying is just I think here's our fun fact that the Catholic Church does not necessarily endorse enneagrams.
Whatever that one is, yeah.
Where were we?
Oh, yeah. So, again, apologize. We are sleep deprived right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we're making it through. I know I left us on the cliffhanger, I think, of I discovered my personality type is the least likely to
Yeah.
believe in God. So, and that led us down that rabbit hole right there, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I agree with everything we just talked about like kind of how dangerous these
Mm-hmm.
things can be. Not wanting to back yourself in a corner and just take it all as gospel what you're reading.
Right.
It's that fine line of look, here are some traits that
Mm-hmm.
are probably going to be a little, depending on where you fall, it's going to be more you, less you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I read that and it was just shocking.
Yeah.
And not that I don't believe in God, it just kind of was like, oh man, if I'm wired this way, um, maybe that's been something I've had a problem with. And so the backstory here is look, anyone who believes in God has probably at one time or another, it's not even questioning it, almost even sounds harsh, but just thought in depth.
Look,
Well,
if you don't question your faith, it's probably fairly surface level.
yeah, and that's how I've always felt like if you're
Mm-hmm.
not going through all angles of something, how much do you really even care about it? But
Right.
so that's what I had always thought before. Then I read this, and honestly, I was kind of like, ugh, because I tend to dwell on things.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what it is. So thinking about God and everything has definitely been something like I will go through every square inch of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was reading this and I was like, oh man, this is the problem. But at the same time, I almost felt a sense of relief
Mm-hmm.
because it was like, okay, it's
This
it,
is because this is how I'm wired.
yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
it's normal for me to do this. Doesn't mean that I don't stray that way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read in depth, like, look, the personality type I am, it's really funny. I should be, according to this, more of like the computer programmer or like scientist type, which science was my worst subject in school by far.
Mm.
And I am probably the least tech savvy millennial that exists.
Mm.
It was a miracle that I was able to get these microphones to work that first time. So, and I do stuff like this all the time. Silicon Valley is probably not where I should live, although the personality types that I did. Anyways, this got me thinking. I don't know. You know how you can watch, if you're watching a movie, you figure out which character you relate with?
Yes.
So, for whatever reason, I was playing in my head, never done this before at all. I was thinking in my head, like, which, like, maybe it's because we had watched The Chosen.
Mm.
And there's, who do you relate to? Where do you think, if you were one of the characters back in the story? And so looking at this, I was like, you know what? I'm totally Thomas. I had never thought that in my life. Nobody probably ever wants to be able to was like, yep, you know what? I guess I'm totally Thomas. Let me stick my finger through the nail holes, I guess, for me to believe.
Need the proof.
Yeah, no, and not really, but I just think
Right.
about stuff all the time. You're probably totally a Simon Peter, but
Yeah, but he was kind of annoying a lot of the time too.
oh yeah, okay, so there is some negative there. Yeah, but so now I have found that I would be Thomas, I guess, there. But it did, so all that to say, it did actually give me peace because I was like, doing this self-reflection portion of it. That was something that it's not even a weakness for me per se, but it was just something that struck me when I was reading this. So when I went through that, it kind of made me say, okay, maybe don't dwell as much on
Mm.
everything, not just God, but anything in life. I can dwell on a lot of stuff. But having something as shocking as that for, whatever statistic that is, it just gave me peace of like, okay, this is kind of how I process things. A, let's work on that. But B, it's okay. This is just kind of how you are.
Yeah, it kind of explains a little bit about you, about where your head goes, where your neural pathways are already ingrained, but you can work on those too.
Exactly. Between that and I just don't show up places on time. Those were two self-reflection things for me, which will kind of lead us into. So the last thing here, the big marriage and how this worked for us, and that was the fun part of everything here.
Yeah, the conflict resolution.
Yeah, that's the big one with that, right?
Yeah, whenever we were reading each other's, it's like, oh yeah, that's you.
That was super funny. So for everything we're saying about, don't line up exactly here. When we got to you can click and say INTP with relationship here, and you can kind of read how you get along with different
Hmm.
people. And when we
Who's
put
compatible and
yeah,
whatnot.
exactly. When we put ours together and started reading, mainly the how we like we're both communicators, and that's true. That's kind of what
Hmm.
what birthed this podcast was
Right.
we would sit there and just talk. But when it got to like the conflict stuff, it was like, oh, that's exactly what we do.
Hmm. Yeah, and some of that we had kind of figured out, even before this point, but it does, yeah, it does explain a lot. Um, I we don't even argue that much, but when we do, for
When
example,
we do,
when we when we do, um,
we have
I
different ways
need,
of handling it.
yeah, I need a resolution.
You need that with everything,
Yeah, well, yeah, but so I need it to be resolved.
right then and there.
And like for sure resolved, and I need you to know where I came from and all these kinds of things, whereas you're just ready to move on.
Yeah, it's the tip. It's not like it's some state secret. Like I think most guys probably handle it like that. But
Yeah.
if we're in any kind of tiff or anything, I'm like, just let me go, and I will handle this on my own, and then I'll come
Hmm.
back in a better mood. That is not how you like to handle it.
No, he comes back in a better mood and it just pisses me off.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like,
Yeah,
how are you in a better mood and nothing is resolved yet?
because it's over. It was like 10 minutes ago. I'm good now. I was mad. Now I'm not.
No.
And it said that. It said that about
Yeah.
us in the thing, and that was really funny.
Yeah, it was pretty on point. And like I said, a lot of this we had already gotten here ourselves. Like we were already joking about like, yeah, that's how we argue. But then you read it and I do feel like reading it about, or like reading the personality of your significant other is like, oh no, that is them. It kind of almost justifies
It
a little bit.
validates it.
Validates, there's the word. It kind of validates it, and it's like, oh, okay, that is kind of how she or he is wired, and they're not just trying to make me angry,
Well, and
which is something like I remember realizing this, going back to your timeliness or lack thereof,
uh-huh.
and it would irritate me. I'd be like, I do not understand. This guy cares about me. Why can he not care about the fact that I want to be places on time?
And
To
now you
me,
know.
yeah, I know. It was like a lack of respect, but really it's not. It's not that. It's just we are totally different when it comes to that. Um, and so now at least just being aware of, that's who you are, it at least lets me know, look, if I need him somewhere on time, I'm really going to have to drive this home. So I try to get out in front of it some. But also, I'm just a little more patient with it because ultimately it's who you are and, I love you. So,
Well, oh, thanks. Love you too. Well, so just a little more on this because I was thinking this. It's the timeliness. Let's start there. It it also so we say it validates. It also gives you the other side of the coin. Like
hmm.
one thing we've talked about in the past is you can get very controlled by making sure you're on time. Like even
Yeah.
if things, because the way I get, it's not that I just blow off. Like some people are going to be sitting here saying like, oh no, he totally does. But it's not just completely blowing off the, agreed upon time to meet up. It's that I have this, because that's not what that J versus P means.
Right.
What it is I don't let the clock dictate me on what life's doing.
Yeah.
If we have three boys, if things are just going sideways, I am not going to lose my mind just to make sure we're somewhere by 7
Yeah.
when 7:20 is just as good.
Yeah. And I think the flip side of it that has helped me appreciate that about you, because I'll be honest, you are who you are and you think you're right. I think
Yeah,
that's pretty much everybody, right?
exactly.
So in this scenario, I'm like, it is a positive that I like to be on time. It is a negative that he does not have time management. We need to work on that. But what I have learned, I would say, is some of your time management skills, or like I said, lack thereof, has kind of worn off on me. And the
Yes.
example would be,
Come to my side.
yeah, a
Actually, that would be terrible for us.
yeah, I know we'd never get anywhere, but I am less worried about getting places on time and a little more present in the moment, I feel, which is positive. But it more so than that, and this is the big example here, I guess, you drive like a grandpa.
I drive safe.
And you drive safely. And that is what I appreciate about you. I appreciate that you don't let being late somewhere dictate how you drive.
I'm logical. Someone get out there and do the math. You can drive 90 miles an hour and you'll get there about, maybe 2-3 minutes before I do.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I would have more of a tendency to put myself or even our kids in harm's way to get somewhere on time. That sounds really awful saying that out loud.
That's why
But
you married me and I
true.
drive.
It's true. Not that I would purposely, you know what I mean, though. Like, I would just be in such a tizzy about getting us somewhere that I might put
No,
us
that's the
in.
point. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. Like that's just the timeliness
Yeah.
aspect of that. And that's, we joked about that being the timely versus not timely, but what it really means, P versus J, is that's the not letting life get in the way. But that's a good balance. And that's what you find with a lot of these. And we were both ins, which, like I said, that's why I think that's the hardest one to move. But going back, so there's that one. Let's go extroverted, introverted. I think it's helped. It does help me. I am able to be more extroverted around you because you're extroverted. And then similarly, I think maybe you'll find like an appreciation of
Or
the
perceiving versus
and the
judging.
the closeness.
Because the
of
example I
talking.
think of is we live on a hill and it's so dangerous pulling out from, well, our driveway isn't on it, but our road to the highway. There's a terrible hill there. And if I was not married to you, 9 times out of 10, I would pull out that way. And because of kind of your take on things and just you rubbing off on me over time, I never go that way. Hardly ever. And I will never go that way with the kids. I turn the other direction and go the longer route into town or to the highway.
It's like 30 seconds longer.
It's a little bit longer. But it's more so just that I never turn that way now. And that's only because of you. I would have risked my life to get somewhere on time before you.
Nothing's worth that. But so then you've rubbed off on me with the extrovertedness, and I think in social aspects, or making me keep up with socialness. That's the thing. Like it's not for a lack of care. It just doesn't pop in my head. Like
Yeah,
that's
it's not
what
where your head
that's what it
goes
says
first.
about I do not value the small talk or the checking in and stuff like that. I'm very I have a point to tell you for this. If we don't, then there's no reason to talk. Whereas you, I think, with the combination of the extroverted and the feeling aspect, whereas I'm introverted, that's the bad combo. The bad combo is the introverted and the thinking. That's where things start to go sideways for me. You throw in the P at the end, and we're just off the rails. But So the feeling and the extroverted, I think that really helps rub off me in a positive
Mm-hmm.
way. And then I think you also you're an information nut, even though that's none of us are exactly on one end of the spectrum or not.
Right.
And so even though you're identifying more feeling off the test, like
Mm-hmm. I'm
combining,
really close on that one
yeah,
too, feeling versus
yeah, and
thinking.
I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't super far off. That's why I said I'm not like heartless or anything. But so that's the point of going through this as a couple or family members, anything like that,
Yeah.
is you can kind of the conflict resolution is the most fun part to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
but you can go through these other items too and see as Darcy will give you plenty of examples of, just
How
come
you
over the
make me
items.
better?
Exactly.
No, but it is that way. I mean, that's part of being aware of this kind of thing, seeing, who you would get along with or where at least where you might struggle. It's not like, if you are not compatible with somebody on this that, you can't be together, but at least you can see the areas that you might struggle so that you can see whether that's going to be worth it in the end or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as we did. I hope you had a lot of fun taking the test,
Hmm.
going through all the things, and just kind of to recap and clean it up because we did stay up late doing this one.
Yeah.
A couple things I want to just make sure we all remember. Like we were saying, this is fun. I think it is a good tool, but don't get too caught up in the details as
Hmm.
my personality type might.
Hmm.
So, this is just kind of something to help you make a self reflection.
Hmm.
And honestly, so work wise, what I was thinking is really beneficial about this. If you have the job you want, maybe you'll find something to help you fine tune it and make it better. Maybe find a path to a promotion that you've been searching for. If you're not in the job you love, maybe this will kind of open the door of you finding some other
Avenue.
yeah, types of jobs that you might be interested in and kind of open some doors that way. Another thing I wanted to talk about is when you do the self-reflection part. Obviously I had the funny example there, but you might also discover some hidden talents.
Hmm.
God gives us all, we were talking about this in the Lenten episode, I think we all
Hmm.
have talents and trying to find a way to use them, and some of them might be hidden from us from just the way we get caught up in our everyday lives. And so you might search and see if you can find any of those. And I think one of the themes we've been talking about with ourselves is if you find your strengths, sharpen those.
Hmm.
You know, Darcy is an extrovert and a very good one. It helps her be good at sales. And when
Hmm.
you combine all of her traits and you work and sharpen those, that's how you get to be as high functioning as you
Hmm.
can. And then you can only get that by also enhancing your weaknesses.
Hmm.
And so when you look at those, don't don't get caught up in well, that's a weakness, that's just how I'm going to be. No, look at that as an opportunity, as like what I was saying with me. I have a tendency to dwell on things, and dwell always sounds negative. I just think very hardly
Hmm.
about everything, go into real deep thought. And sometimes that's really good, like when I'm trying to map out how everything's going to fit in our garden. But other times it can take me on tangents that I really have no business getting stressed out over. So look at those weaknesses and find a way to make them a strength because
Maybe by relying on God.
yeah, exactly. No, that goes back to that example there. Corinthians. We should all read it again under new
New light.
Darcy's. Yeah,
Hmm.
by Darcy's interpretation there.
No, but yeah, rely on God and ask Him for what He would have for you, and where He would have you grow, and fall more into His will.
Yeah, and then the last way, communicate with your spouse.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Bring up your strengths and your weaknesses as a couple. Look at relationships you have with siblings or friends, family.
Hmm.
Find ways like that. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our families. And for me personally, looking at my sisters or your family and stuff, and how we jive, and how sometimes we don't necessarily have conflict, but where things can go not as smoothly, and you start to understand, like, well, it's because we're different people, and it's not like you just chalk it up and say, like, oh, that's it. That's now there's more of like a door opening for, okay, well, this is how that person thinks, or this is why they took this that way. And so it can really, you can use this as a helpful tool to kind of, strengthen your relationships with others.
Right.
So next week, as we journey through our preparation season of Lent, probably some of you, like us, have been preparing for your spring and summer gardens. We have done gardens here and there in the past, anything to shout about.
Nothing to write home about, yeah.
But part of our clean eating, we got into, let's just like go farm to table here. So we are taking on a little bit larger of a garden. And so we were doing a lot of the prep work this weekend. That was one of the other things that in the midst of having no free time, we decided to just, why not go ahead and do that? Because it's that time of year. So we will speak on some things going on with our garden, and maybe even find a way to tie in how prepping our soil for a good harvest is, something we can do for ourselves as well.
Yeah, continuing with our Lenten preparation for Easter.
Well, I hope everyone out there has a great week. I hope you enjoyed this topic and have some fun discussing it with others. And now that we've unpacked the world, time for you to go out and discuss.